There's a single school district in Florida, you'll be surprised to find out, that has already lost 17 employees from COVID-19. Now, as a percentage of the total population working in schools, it's not massive, but that is a big hit for one county to have, and totally needless, and not very shocking considering how Florida and their government have dealt with COVID so far. So this is not like going back to the very beginning. We're talking about employees that have returned to their jobs on August 10th, just a couple of months ago, basically. Let's see, the district doesn't know how they got COVID. It's Florida, you know. Let's see, the Polk County Public School District says the pandemic continues to severely impact our community, and many public servants, including educators, healthcare staff, rescue workers, and law enforcement officers, are experiencing tragic losses. Every death is a devastating blow to our community and reinforces the need for all people to continue taking precautions to reduce the spread of illness, which is true. And I don't know who wrote that message. Maybe the person that wrote that message wishes that they were still doing virtual learning, wishes they had mask mandates and that people took it more seriously and they didn't demonize vaccines. I have no idea. And I have no idea if that would have saved any or all of those who died, but it certainly wouldn't have hurt. And those 17 in one district, that's particularly egregious, but so many people in education have died, Caroline, from COVID. And to have like all of the national conversation about schools and COVID is crazy parents going to school board meetings, demonizing masks, politicians, including DeSantis, financially penalizing districts that try to protect their employees. It's disgusting.
Yeah, this was a real. I took this story, as I'm sure many people will, incredibly hard, just because I think there's a big narrative in the news that Florida is this state that just can't get its act together and is sort of this battleground for a lot of these different cultural issues. And it's easy to get like just stuck in the numbers of their COVID cases, but seeing this specific story was so heartbreaking, just because you're actually I feel like earlier in the pandemic there was a lot of stories like personalizing the stories of people who had COVID, but that's kind of waned a bit. So this is just like a really heartbreaking but really excellent reminder of how a disease has just been weaponized politically and how sad it is. And I think there was an example, the cognitive dissonance that I find really, really sad is, I think there was an article, I think it was the Daily Beast, that talked about a school board member or a mother who wanted her child to wear a mask and was reported to Child Protective Services.
Oh my God.
And the family, they had to be investigated, and the little girl had to undergo an investigation by CPS. And it also reminds me in Beverly Hills, this is happening so many places. In Beverly Hills, there have been really big protests with anti-maskers, anti-vaxxers, literally like going up to children walking to school with their parents and yelling at their parents, saying that their parents are abusing them, their parents are taking away their liberties. And in a moment of like huge irony, I saw this one woman just be like, "You're traumatizing your children," and it's like, you're traumatizing a child. You're screaming at a child going to school. So luckily in Beverly Hills, they passed an emergency ordinance, which is very unfortunate, but bans protests within 300 feet of a school entrance, which you don't want to see that ever have to happen.
Sure.
But it's so sad what has happened, and the lengths to which these individuals who can't stand masks or vaccines, and having been emboldened by people like DeSantis, it's really a stain on this country, and it's heartbreaking. That's really all I can say. It's very sad.
It is, and it would have been, and we've said some version of this, I think 792 times in the past year and a half. It would have been devastating and tragic and horrific if we had done everything we could as a society to stop stuff and people had still died, which they would have. It would have been far less, but it would have happened and it would have been tragic. There are so many needless added layers of horror that we are opting into this. Some percentage of us are there are people advocating for COVID in Florida harder than most people will ever advocate for anything politically in their life. And that's what's going on. We're gonna have a great example actually of that on the show tomorrow. We'll be talking about. But yeah, there's a school board member, Lynn Wilson, who says it's a terrible tragedy. It really is. Our hands are tied. The reality is you can't enforce a mask policy. I know a lot of folks wanted a mask policy. I think the real key was allowing a virtual option, and we couldn't do that either. So imagine being one of these people that, was on a board, cares about education. You just watch people dying. Like, all right, you want to save them, but you can't save them. You're literally not allowed to save them. And that's why, if we can jump ahead a bit, there's this article right now. We feel your grief, remembering the 1,000 plus educators who've died of COVID-19. That was as of September 3rd. Of course, a lot of wave came after that. Another article going around, oh, by the way, one Twitter account lost to COVID, keeps a daily record of school personnel that have died from COVID. They say it's over 1,600. There's an article on WSBTV.com of profiling 50 Georgia teachers and staff lost to COVID-19 since the start of the school year. And we didn't have to do this. We didn't have to. And all those people who were saying, how dare you make the kids stay home? How dare you do the mask? You want funding for COVID resiliency? Who cares? Will never have to answer for any of this. They will never have to look at the list of 50 names of Georgia teachers that needlessly died. And you want to talk about trauma for kids? I'm trying to remember in grade school and high school, a teacher or staff member dying. And I can't remember a single one. Imagine you lose your 6th grade teacher to COVID. That's trauma. That's trauma. COVID pneumonia for kids, that's trauma. Kids are being hospitalized, they're dying. Talking about trauma from a mask. What a stupid country we live in.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.